Welcome to the panel. This is going to be an open panel for the audience. So I'm afraid we don't have a microphone for the audience. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to stand up and clearly enunciate your question, and I'll repeat it for the panel. Yeah, I guess I could ask a few questions to get things going. Yeah, let's do that. That'll be good. We'll go that side down. So please introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Good to see so many people here. My name is Petersen. I lead the team that evolves the Dart language that helps define how the language changes and what the language should be. And it's a pleasure to be here today.
Good morning. My name is Vijay Menon. I'm the Director of Engineering for Dart. Very happy to be here and get to talk to you all. Thank you.
Hey, and I'm Andrew Brogdon. I'm on the developer relations team for Dart and Flutter, so docs, samples, videos, advocating for our developers' needs to all sorts of folks. That's what my team does.
Hi, everyone. I'm John McCutcheon, mystery guest, not on the official list of speakers. I am the Uber TL of Flutter, so sort of TL of TLs for Flutter.
Hi, everyone. I'm Todd Volkert. I lead the Flutter engineering team.
Hi, I'm Slava. I lead Dart engineering.
Hi, I'm Brandon Badger. I'm the product manager for Dart, Flutter, and the Go programming language. So yeah, you have all the right people to get all of your feature requests in for Flutter, so yell them out. Maybe I'll kick us off. Maybe, Todd, what are you most excited about for 2025 for Flutter for Dart?
You're taking Simon's job. He was going to moderate these questions.
It's fine by me.
I am super excited about changing the narrative on performance and really landing the stuff we've been working on for years with Impeller. Landing on Android, having it turned on by default. I'm excited about some of the stuff we're doing with AI. Really excited about macros. I know that's a big fan feature here. Excited for them to land. So there's a lot of really good stuff landing. But I think most of all, that's all lead up to I think there's some talks happening today, and building on Eric's talk this morning, I'm really excited about the community taking the next step in taking Flutter past the build phase into the business phase. I think David Durham is going to talk more about that tomorrow too, but I think I see us at an inflection point where Flutter's about to get to kind of the next big level of growth, which is into like enterprises and big business, which is really exciting.
If you have any questions, please raise your hand. I will ask them as we go. Please, yes.
Yeah, so Slava, I saw your tweet about shipping macros. So what's the status on that?
So the question is, Slava, what's the state on macros?
I mean, that was not a tweet about shipping macros. It was a tweet of working around the bug that trying to ship macros potentially can cause. I think we should let Leaf talk about that because he leads the language engineering, so.
Yeah, so I definitely don't want to commit to anything there in terms of specific dates. In a large part because I think macros are a feature that have the potential to have a really large impact on the ecosystem and the way that it works. And it's a thing, we care about getting every feature right, but there are a lot of things that we need to get right about macros before we can confidently ship them out there. And there's, a big part of that is just the feature itself. It touches on all the parts of the developer experience. We want a good IDE experience. We want a good execution experience. We want to be sure that we're not slowing down the compilers, slowing down the analyzer. So there's a whole lot to do there. And then there's just a lot of pieces to build in that. There are entire sub-language features that we need to build as part of that. And in the meantime, we don't want to kind of entirely go dark. So the team is trying to keep a steady cadence of other smaller things coming out as we go. I think macros are at a point now where if you are interested, you can go play with them in a sort of experimental way, but they're not things that should be shipped out there. And I don't expect that we will be shipping the ability to write macros anytime in the sort of near term, I would expect. certainly don't look for them in the next couple of releases. I do hope that we may be able to start to preview some of the uses of them, maybe by shipping some of the sub-features and possibly even shipping a macro that we write so that people can start to pressure test the experience of working with them. But I know there's a lot of excitement, and that's great to see, because that's great feedback for us, that it's worth the amount of effort that we put into it, because it is a very expensive feature for us, and it will be an expensive one to maintain going forward.
I'll just throw one more thing. We've described it really well. It's potentially a big foot gun, and like my pithy sort of when I talk about this as a team is like, hey, this is static metaprogramming, right? It's by definition doing things at compile time. It is a tool that can turn stateful hot reload into stateful cold reload, and success. That's why we're putting a lot of time into making sure, iterating, seeing what like the experiments look like, figuring out what the experience is, because we do want to do it right. We hear you guys like stateful hot reload, so we want to keep, and I think you all like the hot part of that, so that's something we're pretty mindful about.
I actually had a brief, just very briefly, because I realize possibly not everyone follows this as closely. So when we say macros, by the way, the macro feature that we are working on is a much more powerful thing than like if you're used to like a C preprocessor macro. It basically gives you the ability to write Dart code which introspects on your code as it compiles and sort of generates some code into your program. So you might think a little more like a Java annotation processor, or a little bit like what sort of part of the Swift macros that shipped recently, but very powerful feature.
Sure. Dominic.
So one thing that got me excited recently is workspaces. So you probably hear this many conferences and meetings that in some companies we tend to have a lot of packages, and they essentially make hot reload a cold reload sometimes. And I wonder what's the plan for that? Is it coming anytime soon? And maybe for people that don't know what it is, could you tell a bit more? How it makes, for instance, my life so much easier. Unfortunately, only now for a master branch, but it's a super cool thing that would be like very hopeful for the future.
So the question is, what is the state of pub workspaces and where they're going next?
Yeah, okay, I will take this one. So for those of you who don't know, pub workspaces is a feature that allows you to work with monorepos more efficiently using Dart tooling. It allows analyzer to understand that your monorepo has a consistent pub resolution and use that information to reduce memory usage and analysis time. And Dominic, for example, has tried it on his code base, and it's really, really good for his code base. So he's a very happy person. That's why he asks about it. Yeah, so the team is working on wrapping some things. I think it's almost ready to ship, as far as I understand. We are working on the blog posts and documentation to actually put it out there. There are a few missing pieces here and there, but I think, I don't want to say, well, next stable release it will be fully there, but I think it's getting to the state where people should start adopting it already, really, if they can follow the guidance. That's why there was a mail to the Flutter insiders to try it out, and this is the first stage to get it out there, and I think soon there will be a public announcement about it as well, because all the feedback that we get about it is that it really saves a lot of memory, like at least 30 to 40% savings we kind of see on average as analyzer on monorepos, so that's good number. Yeah.
Next question, please.
What's the current state of hot reload on Flutter web? Because let's just say the past year that's been pretty much the story of my life through Flutter. Getting around it was just having to create a macOS app that's like a tester app that kind of like short circuits the whole notion of not having that in Flutter web. I mean, that's one of the big pain points at it, like not being able to test like on an emulator browser for mobile web, for example. Trying to I guess if you could answer to that part in particular.
So the question was, why haven't we yet got hot reload perfectly working on web yet?
Well,
Flutter way.
Yeah, I will take this one as well, because just yesterday I was talking about how long it will take for us to implement it. We have several engineers from the Dart SDK web team working day and night to implement necessary tooling for the hot reload on the web. Hopefully they don't work in the night, because they're actually not very good to work in the night yet. Hopefully they just work in the day. Yeah, but they're working hard, and we are getting there. And again, I don't want to promise anything, but the timelines look like there will be something to try within the next half a year or so. And well, not just to try, probably use it, but yeah. So half a year, check with me. If it's not shipped, ask me why it's not shipped, but it's getting there. So a lot of infrastructure is being put in place to enable the hot reload on the web that matches the hot reload for the native platforms. Yeah.
And on like, how does one like actually test apps on like a mobile browser, for example? Because those are, your only choices in Flutter Web are pretty much Chrome on the desktop, and the only way to simulate mobile on that is by resizing it. So I'm wondering, maybe is that something that you could expand upon in terms of documentation or examples on how one could just test on like either a simulator or device browser, for those mobile web use cases in Flutter Web?
Yeah, I mean, that's good feedback. That's something we look at too. The reason why Chrome is hooked up is that we do kind of pipe directly into the Chrome debug protocol and translate between effectively the Dart protocol and the Chrome protocol. So we can do a lot more things with things like breakpoint and introspection that will be harder to do on browsers that don't support Chrome's protocol. We'll have, I think we already actually have the setup that you could run these things on, say, Safari or whatever else you want, but you don't sometimes get some of those niceties. I'm not sure stateful hot reload would work on some of those cases. Chrome Mobile should be fine, and you can hook up Chrome Mobile to DevTools. I think if that doesn't work, you can ping us. Yeah, we may need to improve the documentation on that.
That's feedback for me.
But I'll also add, we don't ask people to work at night, just Slava. just Slava. And I'll also add, like, one of the reasons we've been slow, or it's been hard to do stateful hot reload on the web, is that it is very deeply baked in to the Dart virtual machine. One of the reasons it works really, really great in the Dart virtual machine is that it is pretty hooked into the garbage collector, and they both do this very similar process of walking the heap. And so that's why it's been so good. Replicating on the web isn't that easy. We're not changing the underlying JavaScript VM. We don't really have the ability to do that. So it's not like a done deal that we'll be able to get the exact experience. We're optimistic that we can do something that is very much like hot reload, but there's a reason why it's really been technically challenging to do that.
Next question, please. Daniel.
I was going to say, Chrome actually supports mirroring the device's Chrome onto it. So you actually have ways you can run it on like an Android or iPhone, or at least
Android, yeah.
Yeah, you can actually run it on that device and still debug it on.
Yeah, I don't know that we have the documentation for that, but like Chrome does, like you can attach your browser's Chrome dev tools to your mobile device, your Android device at least.
Yeah. Please.
There's a lot of demand for Dart on the back end, and actually a lot of startups working on that. It doesn't look like there's a lot of attention to like Google Cloud or Firebase there. I don't know if you can answer to that because it's a different team, but is there any interest there?
Well, we do talk to the Firebase team frequently. I have been told that in their public space where they ask Firebase users what the most desired feature in Firebase is the ability to write cloud functions in Dart. So go ahead and +1 that and move it from number 1 to number 1. But no, we're actively talking to them. I can't say exactly what we'll plan out, but we do talk all the time to the Firebase team.
Just building on to what Vijay said there, I think there are some targeted things we can do at Google that will help Dart run better on the server. but there's such a large wealth of stuff that can be done on the server that I think letting the community fill that is actually is kind of working as intended as well. Because there's only so much bandwidth that one development team can do. So I think there'll be stuff that, like Vijay says, maybe working with the Firebase team, that's something we're already engaging with. But there's a whole lot more that happens on the server that our community can fill.
And I don't know, Slava, if you want to talk to this, but one of the things we're also really looking at is how to make it easier to build things on top of Dart. Like, what are simple things that we could re-architect to make it easier to embed Dart in other use cases?
I'm a big believer in Dart on the server, or Dart on any surface, if it has a CPU. Doesn't need to have a GPU for that you only need for Flutter. So I would like Dart to support this use case, but we also need to be honest that we don't have resources to build bindings for every single database that exists in the world, and community needs to pick up the things themselves. But we want to enable this use case. So if you feel that Dart does not enable you to ship on the server, then talk to me. I will try to find the way we can help.
Great. Next question. Hands up, anyone?
Okay, so I have maybe more like a meta question here. So we know that there are some certain challenges, like perpetual challenges that need to be solved, like the impeller, platform views, like the native interop, things like that they are getting solved one after another. But I wonder what are the other ones that maybe are not publicly known or haven't been started yet that you are aware of, that you will have to solve them in the next year, 5 years, maybe 10 years. Something that is on your mind, you wish you would be able to start now, but just didn't have enough throughput.
Okay, so one thing that comes to mind for me is first-class support for custom embedders. We're seeing a lot of companies building their own version of Flutter engine that is targeting like some bespoke hardware system, like a television or something like that. And it would be really great if Flutter tools out of the box, you could just sort of like say, hey, I'm using this engine variant of Flutter and have it work out of the box. So that's something that I think we need to do to support, for example, Harmony OS down the road. So something that I think is challenging, but we will need to solve soon.
Yeah, for instance, it'd be great if you wanted to build for LG, you just, Flutter platform, add LG, right? And it went and download the necessary stuff. And then you could just say, oh, here's how I built for LG.
Okay. No. All right, next question, please.
Suggestion for building Flutter on MIPS platform, because today Dart is not supported on MIPS-based platform.
It used to be. MIPS, yeah. It used to. Yeah.
So it used to be supported. We deleted the support because the only customer was Google Fiber, as you heard from Eric. And we did not want, MIPS is a very strange architecture, so we didn't want to maintain it. If there is a huge demand, which we have not seen so far, we can certainly just revert the deletion of the MIPS support, but we need to see the demand, right? That would be the driving force.
That's really the key. There is cost to keeping something, so we try to be relatively aggressive if we see really minimal usage on something, because it lets us move faster, just making our own CIs faster and stuff. But if there's a heavy demand or significant demand for it, then yeah, we revisit that.
Great.
Support. What is MIPS support?
Say it again.
What is MIPS support for people who are not familiar with that?
MIPS is a type of CPU architecture. So if we talk about ARM, that's what most of the mobile phones run these days, but MIPS is another type of a CPU.
Described as well.
I think one of the things that has made languages like JavaScript pretty potent in the ecosystem is the ability to really extend it and build on top of it, meaning like you have JSX, you have like template tags, people have ways to basically embed like DSLs or different ways of expressing themselves in that language for a particular use case. And I was curious, it seems like the current only way to do that would be to like fork the SDK and actually go into the kernel to start modifying stuff. it seems also though that macros could be a potential use case for that. I'm curious if it's crossed your desk at all, or yeah.
Yeah. So we've talked about, there are programming languages that make writing embedded DSLs very easy and very convenient. And we have talked about whether we should make Dart more of such a language, because I think realistically it is not, I wouldn't say there are no facilities for it. We've added extension methods which give you some ability to do a little bit of stuff and a few other things you can do there, but we don't really have the sort of power features that Haskell or even Kotlin now has more features designed around building embedded DSLs. There are a lot of trade-offs in using embedded DSLs, and we talked a lot with the Flutter team specifically about whether they wanted to see more DSL-like code in Flutter, and there's always been a lot of concern about the debuggability and the quality of the error feedback and the guidance that we can give you if you are working in an embedded DSL. And this is feedback we've heard from people using some other systems that are very DSL heavy, is that the error messages can quickly become very incomprehensible. And the leadership of Flutter has felt for a long time that a great strength of Flutter is that it usually is able to give very crisp, concrete error messages, and you can figure out what's going on without going through great deep hoops there. So currently, I do believe there is some interest in focusing on some features that maybe allow code to be written more tersely and more tightly without losing the ability to get good error messages and good completions and good feedback. But I don't think we have any arc of work right now that is specifically focused on making embedded DSLs more possible, to be frank. To your question on macros, the current macro system is, I should clarify further, will not really give you the ability to do macro-like stuff on expressions, on the bodies of methods. What it's designed at is modifying or adding functionality at the declaration level. So if you have a class and you want to add a bunch of boilerplate methods to it, macros are going to be your thing. If you want to define a new kind of iteration construct, these kind of macros are not going to be the thing. And we've talked about maybe at some point in the future looking at macros that let you more sort of write your own custom syntax. But you know, we are already so bandwidth limited by what we can ship right now that that's not planned.
I mean, the two things that came up for me was, potentially, I think the constant expression system, you have this mini interpreter almost, right? Expanding that to include functions or, some other features of the language, and or using macros where you could pass in an actual Dart bit of code to the macro constructor and have access then to the AST of it or something to then work with that however you want.
It's an interesting, there are probably ways to get that last thing, but let's leave that off to the side. I'm sorry, what was the first bit of your question?
The constant.
The constant, yes. We have looked actually at extending the constant language. There are complexities around making sure that the build system continues to scale if you do that. It's complicated. Sorry, it is a fascinating part of the language and one we talk about, but it's also has a large impact on a lot of things. Happy to talk about it offline sometime.
Thanks. All right, next question. See if we can get one at the back of the room.
No, not much. I'll just. Oh, are you?
Okay. Hi. Thank you again for deprecating the HTML renderer on web and making CanvasKit the default. So thank you very much. So my question is around again that same performance. So is there any plans on bringing maybe because of the success of Impeller on all the, let's say, the native platforms, is there any plans on bringing Impeller to the web? And also, why is it that Safari still using any Flutter application build for WASM cannot run on any iOS version of any browser. So is it because of the limitation of, again, like Safari still using WebKit, not still supporting WASM GC? Is it on their side? So maybe we could still blame them. It's not like on your side. So maybe are there any plans on maybe continue pushing the conversation to bring in WASM GC to Safari? So again, first question, Impeller on the web. Second question, Safari support for WASM GC.
Sure. I'll give a brief comment on Impeller on the web. I can't say that anything is going to ship, but I know that there are experiments being made. And Slava, you want to comment on?
Yeah, I can do the second question. So there are multiple parts to this. So first of all, just recently Safari finished the implementation of FastGC support. They had this tech preview thing, right? It took very long time for them. Safari in general takes a long time to implement new features. We know that the stuff that they have actually has issues in it. Like we have been testing it continuously and we found a lot of crashes which we report back to WebKit team. Even when that is all in place and ships on all iOS devices, which we know will take time, there are still missing features. So for example, the WASM build of Flutter Web also comes with a new renderer called Squasm, which replaces CanvasKit with something else. And that is from the very beginning made to depend on kind of worker-based parallelization of the parts of the rendering workload. And that thing cannot be right now implemented in Safari. That does not work because it relies on some other features. We are looking at the ways to have a fallback where in the browsers which do not support necessary features for offloading this rendering to another worker, we will fall back to the single-threaded rendering. And there is a work in progress in investigating how to do it the best way. There are many interdependencies there, but hopefully we will get to a state where it works on Safari. Yeah.
I'll also add that on Impeller on the web, we have done experiments. It is doable. I pushed the team to deprecate the HTML render because we had the HTML render, we have the CanvasKit render, and we have the Squasm render. And there's a lot of technical debt that goes along, a lot of complexity goes along with supporting 3 renders. So we need to finish getting rid of the HTML render. I don't then want to immediately jump into adding an Impeller renderer. So we need to finish landing Impeller on Android. Like, let's do things right and make sure that we roll them out correctly and not just get ourselves into, spread too thin. So it's possible. I can't say it's on the roadmap yet, but it's not out of the question.
Great, thanks.
I have a follow-up question related to deprecating the HTML renderer. Are there any plans to make it easier to use semantics for creating automated tests on Flutter Web? Because that's been a pain point for the QA teams that I work with, and them having to write tests and then having to pepper certain widgets with semantics manually, and then them having to do like a little bit of JavaScript to enable the actual nodes themselves in the DOM in order to lock onto those on those semantic nodes in the HTML. So I guess wouldn't that be counterproductive in deprecating the HTML render, or is there a much better replacement for that going forward?
So there's still semantic nodes in the CanvasKit renderer. They're turned off by default on the web. Accessibility in general is turned off by default because right now it slows things down. And on mobile, that's fine because typically when you have accessibility enabled, that's more important than having 60 frames a second animations and whatnot. The problem on the web is that people will run Flutter by default. They don't have accessibility turned on in their system, so we don't turn it on in Flutter Web. They inspect the page and say, oh, this isn't accessible. When we fix the performance, which we're actively looking into, of accessibility turned on in the framework, then we can turn it on globally in the web, and then your tests will have the accessibility nodes automatically enabled in the tree.
Turn it on manually.
Exactly.
I guess the other one is semantic IDs aren't trickling down into web yet. I know iOS and Android have them, but for some reason web is still the outlier. You have to use labels to properly lock onto these tags in the DOM.
That could just be a bug.
Raise an issue ticket.
Yeah, I guess I'll probably follow up with that.
Great. Yes, question at the back, please.
Forgive me if this is a stupid question, but does Google pre-launch report work with Flutter apps yet, specifically as it relates to the user ID and password fields? Like I know there's a long ticket about it that seemed kind of ambiguous.
I didn't hear the first part of the question.
The pre-launch report and the Firebase test lab, specifically as it relates to username and password fields. Does that just work yet, or is that sort of workable with a workaround, or is it kind of like a someday maybe thing?
I don't know that we have an answer.
Do you know what I'm
between
talking
us
about,
here.
or no?
What's that?
Do you understand what I'm asking?
I understand what you're asking.
Okay,
I don't know
sorry.
that we have an answer. Yeah.
All right. Yes, at the back there, please.
I was stretching, but I do have a question, actually. But I do have a question. So as a library maintainer, one of the things that comes up frequently is as Eric was talking about, we need to start supporting broad swaths of Flutter with enterprise customers using older versions and wanting to support newer versions. But we don't have a way to check in Dart. Are you using an old version of Dart? Are you using a new version of Dart, an old version of Flutter, a new version of Flutter? Is that ever going to come about? It's kind of, we've been talking about back and forth on the Dart issue, and we just don't have a solution for it. Is there something that maybe we can get at some point?
There are many different flavors of this problem, right? It's not just versions. For example, people also want to have platforms that are more kind of, declarative, a mixture of declarative and imperative way to segregate your code in a platform-specific code. Right now, you just have this imperative checks. The versioning also comes in the similar type of is a similar type of an issue. We have talked about it, but we have no concrete plans to address it, unfortunately, right now, because the current view is that you always use a single version of an SDK right now, right, kind of. And then if you want to run a different version of SDK, you switch to a different version of SDK, and maybe the resolution changes and different packages get pulled down and stuff like that. I think if we'll see, again, it is very demand-driven in this sense. So if we see more and more people complaining about it, that it really stops them, then I think we'll think about it, yeah.
You can detect the Dart version, though, when Dart's running.
You can probably parse some version string from somewhere, but it's not the recommended way, right? Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to give you all the tricks.
The official recommended way, which I admit is clunky, is to publish your version of your package saying, this is the SDK supported and here's my version. And then you publish a different version that says, this is now the new SDK supported. So they'll be pinned to the older version. But I realize that's not the friendliest API in the world.
Supporting large enterprise corporations, we now have to maintain older versions of our packages and release point releases all the time to those. And it's what I do, but it's not great.
Yeah.
So are you saying that they run multiple different SDK versions against their monorepo, or?
No, so I'm always keeping up to date with Dart and Flutter. So all of my CI is against the latest version of Dart and Flutter, but I also run a matrix against older versions because we have clients that are still on Dart 2.8. And there are certain things that break from a compiler perspective because in one of the Dart versions, something was added to HTTP client and we override HTTP client. So that breaks, it just straight up breaks. And so we have to keep that version up to date with all the old code. There was one other in Flutter that I worked around, but it comes up every so often. It's not that often where it's super painful, but every so often it's like, well, this version of Flutter, in Flutter 3, you can't do this anymore. But we're still having to support, older versions of Flutter or older versions of Dart.
Okay, yes.
On the Flutter web note, one thing that I find is holding back a lot of clients from agreeing to using Flutter on the web is the lack of SEO support. I've seen solutions, I've built solutions that do offer SEO support, but they're very bespoke and they're like not recommended by Google. Technically it's ghosting, if you know what that means. Is there any progress on supporting SEO or any overall ideas on a generic solution for SEO that's not so bespoke to each use case?
Yeah, we are working on it, and the short answer is that it'll all be based on accessibility. We have found that if you enable accessibility, it enables enough information that the SEO, the crawlers can determine the information about your app, which goes back to my earlier point about we need to enable accessibility globally and not suffer performance problems with it. Once we can do that, then that unlocks a whole bunch of stuff, including SEO.
Great. Yes.
I was wondering about SEO on pub.dev. So when I go into pub.dev and I search some random term, I wish I remembered examples off the top of my head, but it's almost every single normal thing I'd search for a solution for. It is very hard to find a good package. And then like a month later, I found out on Twitter, oh, there's a great package. It's got a bunch of upvotes. Just for some reason, the search didn't work. Is that already on your guys' radar? And do you have any plans to improve the search indexing there?
I think it's on the radar that the search does not always work, but I don't think there are concrete plans to improve it. We just use this bespoke search stuff there, and it always had the problems, but we never had kind of resources, really. It's a resource problem to address this. And I think, again, if we hear more people complaining about it, then we will probably prioritize it. But in general, yeah, it's a hard problem to solve, because when you search for a specific term, there are many packages with different quality that are very hard to kind of rank. We try to solve this ranking problem in different ways using different signals, but again, the search is a hard problem, and building your own custom search engine requires a lot of effort.
Whole companies were built around such things.
I will mention that you can actually add topics now to your packages, which helps them searchability as it were. Yeah.
The second half was just a small comment. I really like Flutter's core DevX. All the places where I have pain are usually the things around Flutter, like generating launcher icons, generating a splash screen, searching pub.dev. And it feels like that's a bit out of scope for the Flutter team, at least where your priorities seem. And this is just a small comment that I'd love to see more attention to the periphery of what a Flutter developer does.
Multi-platform is hard. Any comments? Okay.
As a newer Flutter dev, have been doing software for a while, but where would you suggest to contribute to the community for someone newly entering the community and kind of wanting to help out in different areas?
Do you want to take anything?
Yeah, I can take that.
I can give a couple answers as well.
Yeah, Andrew, you can go on riff on this too. But so first of all, I think there's going to be several talks at this conference specifically around that, around how to empower the community. So I was talking with David DeRemer. He's giving a talk tomorrow specifically on that topic. So I attend that. I think it's tempting as an engineer to say that the answer is an engineering answer. Right? It's tempting to say, dive in and fix this bug and do this thing. And I could wax philosophical about all the stuff that you could do on that front. I think the truth is that finding the holes from the business point of view, to Eric's point, is probably the most impactful thing to the community, right? And working with, and sorry, this isn't an engineering answer, but working with the Stripes of the world too. Why, when I go to Stripe, do I not see web, Android, iOS, React Native, and Flutter? Why is it a package way over here? So helping to find those holes that businesses need and improve the stability of those, helping to, develop training courses and certifications. I think that is kind of the next big growth in our community, as much as it's fun to go dive in and fix a bug and make a package better.
I can give a little detail from the DevRel's perspective too. There are a lot of ways to contribute to the community in straight up engineering, which a lot of folks in this dais would be better at telling you than I would. But in terms of the community itself, there's a couple of things that you can do that may not be so obvious. One of the questions we asked in the Flutter survey is, can you find role models in the community that you want to emulate? And you can be one of those role models. If you're in this room, you probably know a lot about Dart and Flutter that the average person just starting out just doesn't know. Be a mentor. Let people know that, hey, I can meet with, I'm available for mentorship at my company, or you shout it out on social media that I can meet with somebody half an hour a month and look for somebody that can benefit from your knowledge and your experience and know that there's a path for them. That's just something that doesn't necessarily occur to everybody, but it's very important. Another way is to be someone who models the kind of behavior that we like to see in our community. I have sent dashes to folks for replies on forums where somebody like started to see some toxicity and just chilled it out. And we do that sometimes, but having the community, somebody who's in the community be like, this is straight up not what I'm here for, and just calm down a conversation. We've sent people dashes and stuff. Those things are so important and so subtle that those small acts of community leadership and cultural leadership matter a lot. So just being present and modeling that kind of stuff is of real value as well.
We have time for a few more questions. Yes, please.
I've run into a few people who have tried the Flutter framework and they have reported that they feel like they have a poor experience in like the first hour, especially if they're coming from a place like JavaScript where they're expecting things to work a certain way. I was just wondering if you guys think about the first 5 minutes, first hour, first day experience in Flutter and how often you audit that and look at it periodically.
A lot, actually. We also are working on our first week experience as well. There's been a lot of stuff sent into that. There are things, we recently revamped our getting started experience to try and streamline it. So we weren't asking people to install all the native tool chains at once, for example. It's the kind of thing that we will make continual improvement on and need to make continual improvement on. So that is one thing. There's some others like Rody from the IDX team is outside, Rody Davis. IDX is another way people can get started and try Flutter quickly without needing to set up a whole bunch of stuff. Hot Reload on the web. One of the people who's also waiting with bated breath for Hot Reload on the web is the entire DevRel team, because that can fundamentally change our getting started experience, where you don't have to download anything but Chrome and the Flutter SDK. And so there are some things there. If you have other ideas, which I'm guessing you do, bring the issues, bring them to the docs, bring them to our getting started flow and stuff like that.
So I think we do a really good job in those areas that you've mentioned, and I'm glad that you guys spend time on it. But I think about it as more of like an end-to-end experience of take like someone who's an experienced JavaScript developer and they want to get into Flutter and they want to make an app that makes a network call. They have to make some data models. They might be used to using Zod or some other type of data model system, and then be able to persist data on the device and be able to have offline caching. These sorts of things are trivial in the JavaScript world, and I think that they add up really quickly to being quite difficult in our world.
Let me ask a follow-up question. Do you feel that they're difficult because we don't offer people the right tools and the right actual engineering experience, or is it because we're not guiding them to the best parts of our ecosystem and the best parts of Dart and Flutter?
I think it's a combination of it not being clear like what the sane default experience is there. Like somebody who doesn't care what technology stack they're using, but they want to try Flutter. There are so many options that are provided by the community, and a lot of them feel kind of like they're in like a partial state, and they don't have that same. I've heard from these people that they don't have that feeling of being able to, for example, create a React app and then pick, I think it's called YJS for things like an offline mode, and then be able to pick like legend state. And they feel like it's when they pick an option in that world, they get a complete solution. And then when they pick an option in our world, they feel like they get a partial solution.
So let me tell you about some change. I don't want to dominate the conversation here. There's a couple of changes, things that my team is working on right now that sort of fall into this and that aren't super publicly known right now because we want early feedback, but not a huge amount of readership. One is the first week experience that I mentioned before. If you go to the Get Starting experience on Flutter, which some of y'all may not have done for a long time because you've already started, we used to end that experience on a Learn More page. It was like page 6 of the Getting Started experience, and it was like 30 blue links, and we basically told you, okay, you're started, go have an adventure. If you go to that page now, there's a little block up at the top that says, hey, we're working on a new version of this. Click here to check it out. And we call it the first week experience. And it is more of that. We're going to point you to, for local storage, this is what it means in Flutter. And we're going to recommend some of the good packages from our community for that. For making network requests, this is how you do, basic like 90% networking using Flutter. And we have multiple topics like that. And at the bottom of every topic page is a link to a survey where you can tell us where the holes are, where we can make it better, where the experience isn't good enough, even after you read the docs and you're like, I really need something slightly different here. So that's one thing. Another is we have a project with new architectural guidance for Flutter. So it's, okay, yeah. If you go to Flutter samples, the GitHub repo Flutter samples, you can see the code for it landing. There's a gentleman here by the name of Eric Windmill who is the lead for that project. He'll be here at this event. Not right now, but he'll be here later today, I think, probably at the little booth that we have outside. And so everybody's going to do their architecture differently eventually, but like if you're just starting out and somebody just asks you to be the TL of a team or something like that, you got a medium-sized app and you want to know, just give me the best practices to get started with. That's something that we're landing right now as well, and we'd love more feedback on. Yeah.
Yes, one more question here.
Hi. Google currently provides a toolchain for building the Flutter for embedded platforms, and that toolchain actually currently doesn't have support for building Flutter for MIPS-based platforms. Again, is the reason for not having the support to build for MIPS-based platform driven by the demand here?
That's correct.
Any more questions in the room?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment regarding hot reload on web and a trick that we do at work to make that possible. So you can actually force your web to run on like an iPad or a larger display and have the hot reload experience, even though you're building for web. And eventually you're going to run on web, but you could potentially just have that hot reload feature on a virtual simulator or a tablet.
Yeah, that's originally been our answer, is hey, you get hot reload, you can run on a different platform and then just deploy to the web. But I realized that doesn't work for a lot of developers because they have plugins working that only work on the web and they want to see the web experience. So we realized that there's a valid demand for hot reload on the web, which is why we're working on it.
Yeah, and as we said earlier, it's deeply baked into the Dart virtual machine garbage collector that's used on development on every platform but web, right? And so we can take advantage of that, and that's why it works. Even if your intent is to ship on the web, if you have the ability to develop on desktop, you can take advantage of it as well. But yeah, I'm very hopeful we'll be able to get this working on the web.
Okay, so we have time for one last question, so make it a good one. No pressure. Let's go for this chap over here. We haven't had anything for this other room. Thanks.
One quick question. One quick question about Dart enums. Is there a possibility to make that Swift like Dart enum associated values? Is that a tough pull?
That's a big one. I don't currently anticipate a lot more work on enums directly. If anything, I think where we might go is making sealed classes easier to work with. I think that would give you a lot of the functionality that you're looking for, but currently there's a lot more, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot more verbosity in using them. And so I think there's a few small steps that I think are either in the pipeline or have been talked about to get you closer to being able to define a set of sealed enums very briefly. Again, I'm not promising this is coming anytime in the next, but that's more of a direction that I see this going in.
Great. Right, I'm sure everyone's quite hungry for lunch. Lunch serves in 10 minutes. It'll be served down here and upstairs. And let's give it up for the panel. Thank you very much.